How we doing on sound? We good? Ooh. Hello. Can you hear me? Two. Awesome. I mean, yeah, good. All right, staying there. Hi, you guys. How are you all? Lady Eva, got your message. I understand there are complications with the post office because the post office is trash. Almost every shipping agency is trash, if we're being honest. So, we also had a package sent back that they didn't even attempt to deliver, and they were like, we're going to return it to sender. And we were like, and for what? So, I get it. Hi. Oh, I believe it. They are constant trash. Hi. I got your package. Someone sent me Fear Institute. Someone, I say, as though we do not all know. It was Thorny. It was Thorny Rose. It was Rose. For those who didn't know. I assume everyone knows all of the business. If you're here, I'm assuming you're in the redacted. I did, because I didn't know what it was, actually. The packaging was really squishy, and I was like, what's in here? I gotta make sure this is appropriate. I didn't want to open it and it'd be like something dead in there. And I was like, oh, because then if I'm opening that on live. I opened and looked through it. But did you leave something in here or something? What did you do? Did you do something in here? Look inside it. What's in here? Oh, there it is. Ensure the book is the survey. All right. It's signed. Oh my god. That's amazing. I fucking love it. And it's also signed by Michael Davis. This is our favorite page. Great. That's solid. That's solid. I like it. Thank you. This is mine. This is the copy that's never getting loaned out now. Oof. Loan the other one out. Since it's trashed anyway. The way I hold my book, I just ruin all the pages. So this is going to be the loaner one. The dedication page was signed by the people it was dedicated to, and the title page was signed by Jonathan Howard. Do you? I need to take care of it, honestly. This half needs to be shaved again. This needs to be dyed. This filter makes it look even weirder. It's the one that looked the least weird, if I'm being honest. So, I could make it weird. I could make it weird if I wanted to. But yeah, I thank you very much, Rose. I really appreciate it. And it's your birthday. Haha, happy birthday. Hello. Glad you could make it. I'm waiting for a little bit, everybody to filter in. We're just opening mail and talking about how shitty UPS is. I bet. I gotta get into voice chat. I know. Um, I've been kind of trash this week. I'm sorry I'm not in cosplay too. I was supposed to be. I had to go to the chiropractor today, so I've been having some difficulties this week, among other things. So, but we're getting it taken care of, and hopefully I'll be good next week and I can get back to filming and doing some stuff that I need to do cosplay wise, and I need to rework on some stuff, a lot of editing. So they hooked me up to like an electrostim machine for a while, and then I'm gonna get my adjustment done tomorrow because it was so bad today. He was like, he was like, you're gonna hate me if I try and do an adjustment today, so we'll wait until tomorrow. So I sat in an electrostim machine, and then we're gonna try again tomorrow. But it's feeling better to the point where I can kind of function. But I missed so much work this week. I was pissed. And I got nothing done. And I'm flat broke because I paid rent and then my back went out. So I pretty much paid my rent, and then I was like, it'll be fine because then I can pay utilities next week. After this week, where I make my money, and then I made no money because I couldn't get in and out of my car. So it was really bad. It was so bad I was getting nauseated moving, and I couldn't sleep. Anytime I would move in my sleep, I would wake myself up. It was pretty bad. So we're getting that taken care of tomorrow, and hopefully I'm going to be good enough to work, and I can pay my bills. That'll be really great. Oh, thank you for the corgi. That's adorable. But yeah, so I'm really hoping I can get that sorted out, and next week I can get back in cosplay and do some stuff, but I haven't felt super great this week. So we're getting it worked out. It's going to all work out, and it's going to be good. But anyway, that's my shit story. So let's not talk about it anymore because that's lame and sad. Let's talk about something else. How have you all been? Anything of note other than we cleared birthdays? You missed it at the top to declare your birthday. Oh, the car's working. Car's working fine. He did fix it. I'm not paying for it. I did, yeah. I get the car fixed and then immediately my back goes out. It's one thing right after another, you know what I mean? So, but the car does work. Now we just gotta get my back working and everything will be fine. Studying for finals. Oh, geez. Good luck with that. Ah, sweet. You got all of them? Awesome. I'm so behind. I want to build up the collection. I haven't read it in a while. I need to catch up on reading it. I also need to build up the collection, but I never can find all of them sequentially. It's like that every single time I try and collect anything. Covered in cats. That's the life. You did just get birthday sushi. Okay, that's acceptable. Accepted. Birthday sushi is always of note. Happy birthday. Yeah, see, like, Amazon will be out, and then anywhere local that would have... Because the only way you're gonna really get it local here is if it's like a Barnes and Noble, and then more than half the time they have half of them missing anyway. So you kind of just gotta hope for the best. ACT, oof. I've been trying to get my ACT record for like a hot minute, like several months. And the thing is that ACT for me was like years ago. So they were like, what's your PIN? And I was like, I don't remember that. And they were like, okay, what was the email you set it up with? I was like, you mean my high school email? I don't have access to that. And they were like, is there any other way you can verify your identity? I was like, I could give you my social. What do you want? And they won't accept that, which is super weird. Well, you also had back problems. So if you're not able to feel the lower extremities of your legs or toes or anything, cold and snowing when you move today. Oh, that's the worst. I hate moving in the cold. Hopefully it wasn't too bad for you. It's only really shitty if there's stairs. If you have to move stuff upstairs. Like, maybe that's just me. I hate moving stuff upstairs. It was like really, it was rainy and hot here today. Like it was really nice outside, and it was saying it was going to rain, but it looked too nice to rain. So we had one of those just straight up 10-minute downpours, but it was really sunny the entire time. And we don't often get rain like that, so it was extremely odd. I got out of the chiropractor's and I went outside and I was like, really? Just when I thought it wasn't going to rain today. From a second floor in a house to a basement apartment. So you have to go downstairs, is what I'm hearing? 84 humidity. It got really humid after it rained today, though, so it was like... It was nowhere near 84, though. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't that high. That sounds terrible. It's all downstairs. Hey, at least you move the stuff downstairs. Now you gotta be worried about when you move out, and you gotta move it all upstairs. That's the biggest problem. That's really gonna suck when you move out. I'm just gonna put that out there. But hey, that's a future that's a future IFA problem. Yeah, I was like, that's... Yeah, hopefully that's years away and you won't have to worry about it. I decently like this house. I am planning on moving at some point, but I just don't want to move any place with stairs. I've done that. And the one time I did, I was like, this is too much. This is not okay. Trying to move a futon and a sofa upstairs. Trash. Sarah gave himself a concussion moving a television upstairs from my old apartment. It was bad. Oh, jeez. Do you have an inhaler for your asthma, or do you just... That's a personal question. Don't answer that. You're not entitled to... I'm not entitled to that information. Forget I said that. Oh, jeez. Getting a washer and dryer down there is gonna suck. That's gonna be super lame. I was gonna say, I'm not entitled to information. You don't have to tell me things just because I ask. Okay, it's a momentary curiosity, and then I realize it's an intensely personal question. And I don't mean to press you into answering personal things. But thank you. I was wondering, because I know I have another friend who has asthma who doesn't have an inhaler, but they still get it, because I don't remember why they don't have an inhaler, because I think they can't use them anymore or something. So I'm really curious how that works. You can't freaking find it. We've not. I've been kind of, well, I guess busy isn't the right word. I just threw my back out. Between the car and my back and bills, it's all been one kind of shit show. But I do hope I'm going to be able to get to color those here. I'm going to give one to Sarah. I don't know if Denki will want to do one, but I will see. Yeah, it's been kind of a whole trash fire of a week. You have no idea. Well, you have some idea. You have about 66.6% of an idea. But it's been not great. So I've pretty much been incapable of really moving a whole lot the past 3 days. Anytime I try, I fall down or something similar. It's been very debilitating. So I've been pretty much being what I would term as too lazy. But then again, if I'm not working on something and I'm not producing anything, I do feel like I'm wasting time, and that's a personal issue. I'm working that out. Relaxing is not the same as being lazy, and I need to quantify that in my head on my own time. But I've been laying around playing Genshin Impact. Just days of Genshin. No explanation other than I couldn't really move that well, so laying down pretty much in this exact position, because laying fully horizontal hurts and sitting up in a proper 90-degree angle hurts. And this is the only thing that is sort of comfortable and or causes the least amount of pain. Yeah. So I've been just chilling, playing Genshin for days. I am currently trying to get Xiangling just for days because I hate Amber. And if you were in voice chat the other day, you know why. But I hate Amber and I don't have any other pyro and I'm super mad about it. And it makes that game infuriating to use Amber all the time. So I'm trying to get Xiangling off of... Shut up. I don't know why I said shut up. You don't have to. I've been trying to get Xiangling for days now because I've had nothing else to do. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just... Amber annoys you? Yes. Amber annoys me too. Also, I just wish her moveset was more effective. The only way she does elemental damage until you get her limit break is with the charge shot, which is annoying. I'm not going into this again. Anyway, I'm gonna get real heated like I did in voice chat the other day, and I can't do that on main. I can do that in voice chat. Can't do that on main. So we're going to skip it. Who wants to read a book? You're amused, I'm supposing. I'm glad you understand. You've played it. You've experienced it. You know. Book. Awesome. We're going to read a book. If you've never been before, I don't think there's anybody in here that hasn't been in here before because the numbers tell me that it's just the normal crowd. But if you're in here and you don't know what we do, each week I read a book, not a whole book, just a couple chapters from a book that we've spent an amount of time reading. And right now we're working through my favorite series, the Johannes Cabal series. We've read the complete first one, The Necromancer, which is up on YouTube. If you need to know where the YouTube channel is, it's in the link on my TikTok bio. And if you don't know what we're reading now, we're reading the third in the series, Johannes Cabal and the Fear Institute. The first and second one are on the YouTube, and you can find them there. So if you don't know what's going on and you don't want spoilers, you better leave now and go catch up. And we'll see you here next week, maybe. If you don't care about spoilers and you just want to stay here for a good time, what is the rest of your life like? Because we're on like chapter, 5, 6? We just started this one, but we're a couple chapters in, you're going to be a little lost. You can maybe figure it out if you try real hard, though, and we're not going to press you if you want to stay. But we're going to start chapter 5. So he's accepted the commission for the Fear Institute. They've gone into the Dreamlands, and they got kind of lost in the dark wood and encountered some spider baby things. And Johannes thought he would get a little bit too big for his britches and started calling out dark god names just to fuck around and find out. And he did fuck around, and he's gonna find out because he called upon Nyarlathotep, and Nyarlathotep heard. So he in big trouble. And we're gonna continue because that's where we left off. Thank you for the donut. Thank you for the donut. Thank you. I'm going to take a drink real quick. And this is my smoothie. All right. Chapter 5, in which Cabal wanders from the bucolic to the necropolitic. The path did indeed lead them somewhere, and somewhere practical rather than to a cottage made of gingerbread or full of bears or dwarves or all three. They emerged from the dark wood on a long rolling meadow that sloped down toward a tree-lined road bounded by small fields of corn. The heavy silence that had traveled with them was lifted by clear air and sunlight, and their mood, but for the impenetrable sullenness of Johannes Cabal, lifted too. That will be the road for Hloneth down there, eh, Cabal? Said Cord, unaware of or unconcerned at Cabal's metaphysical torment. Finally, a bit of good luck on this expedition. Perhaps so. Cabal signaled a halt by the simple expedient of stopping and expecting everybody else to follow suit. He took out his telescope and surveyed the terrain. There are a couple of people down there by the road. We shall ask. Isn't that risky? Asked Bosie. In this place, even blinking is fraught with peril. Yes, it is risky. They look like a pair of yokels doing whatever it is that yokels do during the day, but they may turn out to be hideous monsters intent on chewing out our spleens. He shrugged. It happens, but what is one to do? He started walking again. Bosie pattered along in his wake like an anxious pug. Do you think that is likely? No, perhaps. Yes, how should I know? I'm a stranger here myself. And so, having put Bosie's doubts to rest, or not, he fell back into a ratiocinatory silence from which he would not easily be dislodged. As they approached the road, Shadrach commented disapprovingly, Look at those sheep. They're in among the corn. They'll bloat and die from eating it. You seem very knowledgeable on the matter, Mr. Shadrach, said Cord. I come from a farming family, said the tall, thin, ascetic, and thoroughly unbucolic Shadrach. We kept sheep on the top moor, and heaven help anyone who let them get into the cornfields down by the river. They were now only a few dozen yards from the couple by the road, and conjectures could be made without recourse to a telescope. If they were hideous monsters with a penchant for spleen, they carried it well. Cabal's guess of yokels seemed far closer to the truth. They were young people, he a shepherd in a blue smock and red vest, brown-booted and gaitered, a wooden flagon hanging from his belt, his hair a coarse, wiry brown, his sideburns hedge-like, she Equally rustic, though apparently wearing her best red dress and white embroidered blouse, a young lamb lay in her lap, crunching sour apples. Judging from Shadrach's angry intake of breath, this was also something sheep should avoid. They were sitting by the edge of the road between the trees, chatting and giggling, and altogether unaware of anything else outside their sphere. "Excuse me," said Cabal. "How do we get to Juaneth from here?" He did not ask if this was the right road for, on closer acquaintance, it clearly wasn't much of a road at all, just a narrow avenue between two rows of unkempt trees. Perhaps once it had led to a great house or estate, but now was overgrown and even pitted deeply enough in places to create small shadowed pools, one of which the girl was cooling her bare feet in. The shepherd boy looked up at them with dull surprise, the natural stupidity in his rubicund face plainly enhanced by drink. Behind him, the girl leaned over to look at the newcomers. Her action was coy, but her expression was knowing, and Cabal disliked her for that just as much as he disliked her beau for his bovine inanity. The boy scrambled to his feet, belatedly alive to his dereliction of duty. "Just a moment, Your Honor, just a moment." He ran off to drive the more adventurous sheep from the corn, leaving Cabal's party in an awkward silence with the girl. She, for her part, did not rise, but remained seated on the green swath, idly playing with a strand of her russet hair and smiling slightly at them. Cord smiled back to Shadrach's disgust, Cabal's incomprehension, and Bosey's blithe ignorance. "I wonder, my dear," ventured Cord, eliciting a quiet snort from Shadrach, "if you could direct us to Juaneth. It can't be far from here." She did not speak, but replied by pointing at the end of the avenue to the south and gesturing vaguely eastwards. Then she went back to toying with her hair and smiling at him. "Thank you," said Cord, low and slowly, and there was a definite air of twiddling a thin mustache if he had been wearing one. "Thank you, miss," said Shadrach in a tone of subdued outrage. "Come along, gentlemen." And he led them off to the south, followed by Cabal, Bosey, and in a desultory fashion, Cord. As they walked away, the shepherd came back, his hands cupped around some interesting insect he had found. He watched them go with a dull lack of understanding or even remembrance. Then their presence slipped from his mind altogether, and he sat down by the girl again to show her his new treasure. Cord watched all this over his shoulder and laughed. "As pretty as a picture," he said to the others. Shadrach would have none of it. A particularly vulgar picture, the product of a coarse and depraved artist. But that made Cord laugh all the more. The girl, for all her dubious taste in suitors, was at least a reliable guide. The avenue ended beside a road between high embankments and topped with trees and bushes. It was clear and frequently traveled. They met a tinker coming from the east who confirmed that they were on the Juaneth road, and shortly thereafter they got a lift on a wagon, taking fodder into the city. The four men perched on the swaying pile of hay with differing degrees of assuredness and dignity, and even gave voice to their belief that the expedition was past its stumbling stage and was now properly under way. "Yes, indeed," said Cabal. "Apart from the trifling facts that we have no idea where the Animus is, whether its whereabouts are known to anyone in Juaneth, or, and this is my personal favorite, if it even exists. Apart from those caveats, yes, everything is going swimmingly." Juaneth, however, was no disappointment on first sight. The land around it was low and marshy, but approached from many directions by causeways both natural and artificial. These converged on a great sloping plateau no more than a few dozen yards higher than the surrounding marshland, a plateau that sloped gently down towards its seaward side. The granite walls that ran around the town proper were almost unnecessary to the defenses. The approaches could be made very difficult to any enemy, but it seemed that the town architects had felt that walls were necessary, so there they were. Their wagon clattered up an artificial causeway whose length was broken here and there by bridges to let the highest tides wash in and out of the marshes unimpeded. The illusion of reality was remarkable, Cabal admitted to himself. The sea breeze blew in and brought the smell of brine with it. Gulls, identical to the birds of earth as far as he could see, wheeled and cried over the hummocks of harsh seagrass growing across what seemed to be the estuary of a great river that had disappeared. He watched as a gull flipped a fish out of a shallow pool where it had been stranded, immediately starting a fierce squabble among the rest of the opportunistic flock. The wagon paused briefly at a guard post close to the end of the causeway. The guard's questions and search were so cursory and disinterested that it seemed Loneth had little need of any defenses at the moment, natural or artificial. The wagon was directed onwards across the drawbridge and under the portcullis of a small keep that was built across the full width of the causeway, an artifact from a less settled time and a precaution against a dangerous future. And 10 minutes or so later they were clambering down and thanking the wagon driver outside a gate in the town wall. He, for his part, surprised them by refusing to take payment and wished them a pleasant stay in the city before parting from them. The guards on the gate were only fractionally more interested in Cabal's party than the ones on the causeway had been, but only as far as discovering that they were new to the Dreamlands. They asked if they had come via the Enchanted Wood, and Cabal lied and said that they had. He suspected that if the guards heard that their route had taken them through the far more dangerous Dark Wood, then there would be more questions, starting with, "So why aren't you all dead?" Once the guards' initial prejudices that they were dealing with a bunch of tourists was confirmed, the expedition was allowed into the city proper. None of them were quite sure what they had expected Loneth to look like, and this was as well, for every expectation would have been beggared. The town was medieval in flavor, yet peculiar in execution. There was something very Scandinavian about the tall, peaked roofs. Yet the crossbeams and plaster seemed more Tudor, and the mixture of thatching on some buildings, while their immediate and otherwise identical neighbors were tiled in the Mediterranean style, just seemed willfully contrary. Bosey looked around with hands on his hips, every inch the gormless tourist. "Well, I never," he kept saying, which was both true and redundant. "Well, Herr Cabal," said Shadrach, "how do we proceed from here?" "We search, and we research. Herr Cord, you strike me as a man who would be at home gathering intelligence in a tavern. I would suggest you find somewhere busy and not too disreputable and start there. Herr Bosey, there must be some form of library or university here. In your persona as a magistrate, you may be able to gain access to an archive that we cannot. Learn what you can, or at least gather lines of investigation that may prove fruitful. Herr Shadrach, Loneth is primarily a trading center, and the mercantile guilds will surely be strong. Merchant ships crisscross the world from here and may have brought back some useful data for us. I would suggest you make the acquaintance of the local merchant princes and discover what you can. We should all make our own arrangements for somewhere to sleep, then meet on the morrow." This seemed like a sensible use of their time, and none had any problems with it, beyond an understandable lack of confidence as to how well they might get on with the locals. This was quashed by a heavy implication from Cabal that they were subject to the influence of the phobic animus, and so were behaving like, and this is not the exact phrase he used, but certainly gave a sense of it, a big bunch of Jessies. "And what will you be doing while all this is going on, Cabal?" asked Shadrach as he doled out coins to the others, mostly to Cord, who reckoned he might have to get in a few rounds of drinks, a duty he seemed very happy to be taking on. Cabal did not answer immediately, but looked down that long avenue at whose head they stood on the defensive wall that would seal off the docks in case of a seaward invasion, and beyond to the oaken wharves and ships, and still further to the great blue-gray Cernarian Sea. "There are other questions to be asked and other sources to be questioned," he said distractedly. Then, drawing himself back to the present, he added, "We will meet here at midday tomorrow to exchange what we have discovered and to decide what to do next. Are we agreed?" And so they parted. Cabal did not make enquiries. Experience had given him instinct. He simply followed his whims until they brought him, as they always did, to the graveyard. In this particular case, graveyard was a poor sort of term for a true necropolis, a labyrinth of lanes and alleyways bordered by tombs like stone huts, opening out into fields of grave markers and squares where the municipal buildings were great mausolea and temples to the departed souls. It might seem strange that there was death within sleep, but the truth of it was that the dreamlands were as real as anywhere else, at least while you were within them. Judging from this town of the dead that nestled within a city of the living, many would never leave. Cabal had entered the necropolis at its western gate and walked until he found himself at its heart, a great circus in the metropolitan rather than three-ring sense, of white gravel encompassed by great curving curbs of stone tall enough to sit upon, which Cabal did. The curbs were periodically broken by beginnings of avenues that radiated outwards to every corner of the enormous area. Cabal watched a funeral enter the circus and depart down onto that one of the avenues, a long column of figures in an all-encompassing black veils fore and aft, with a much smaller group of soberly dressed men and women following an open hearse drawn by 6 black horses. These latter people were dignified rather than mournful. Unlike the veiled figures that sobbed and wailed and struck postures of extravagant spiritual distress, Cabal waited until the funeral had largely processed onto the avenue before getting to his feet and walking after it. He caught up with the rearguard professional mourner and coughed until he gained its attention. "Excuse me, madam," he said. "I was wondering if you could perhaps help me." "You can start by calling me sir," said a bass voice from within the veil. "Yes, quite my mistake," said Cabal after the shortest of pauses. "I was thinking that in your profession you must have a good knowledge of the layout of this necropolis, and—" "Look, squire, I'm working," interrupted the mourner, continued to strike attitudes of mortal grief. "The punters have forked out 40 mourners, not 39. If you want to talk, keep up and look mournful. Savvy?" "I don't have to be extravagant about it, do I?" Cabal was watching the others, who looked like nothing so much as a dance troupe extemporizing on the theme of electrocution. "You couldn't do it if you wanted to. Takes years of practice and 3 guild examinations to get to this standard. No, just look as if you gave a bugger about the departed and follow along." Cabal doubted he was a good enough actor to manage that, but he had spent his whole life polishing somberness to a dignified mahogany glow that looked much the same to the unpracticed eye. Thus he followed at a steady funeral pace, and that did very nicely. "So what did you want to know, mate?" said the mourner, when he was satisfied that Cabal's presence was an asset to the procession. "I was wondering if you could direct me to the oldest part of the necropolis." The mourner almost stumbled in mid-mime declamation. "You want to go where? What for?" he said in open astonishment. "That's the bad place." "It is also the interesting place, and for me, the necessary place." "No, seriously, chum, you don't want to go there. There's ghouls up there. The gardeners only go once a month, and even then under armed guard. You're looking to get chewed if you go up there." "I'm not afraid of ghouls," said Cabal. "In fact, I might even learn something of interest from them. They are not my current concern, however. Does anyone live there? Any soothsayers, oracles, anything like that?" He had the impression that the mourner was looking oddly at him. "How'd you know?" "It is a principle of the dreamlands that themes of folklore are followed, even if they are altered or corrupted. Oracles and soothsayers are associated with shunned places. Therefore it seemed rational to seek out such a place. Given the predilection of ghouls to populate old graveyards and cemeteries in both worlds, I guessed their quarter would represent such a shunned place. The impression of being oddly looked at had not diminished, although its timbre had changed. "Well, you did ask," said Cabal, perhaps a little tetchily. The mourner looked at him a moment longer, then started striking attitudes once more, albeit at an accelerated pace to catch up with the procession. When they were back in place, he said, "There's supposed to be a witch." "A witch," Cabal repeated. He shrugged. "Good enough. When you say witch, do you mean the sort with a cauldron and potions, or just a mad old lady who feeds stray cats?" "How should I know? Never been up there, but there is supposed to be a witch." A witch, then, would have to do. Cabal took leave of his short career as an amateur mourner with directions to the purportedly doom-haunted old cemetery in the northeastern quadrant of the necropolis and set off at a swift stride. Finding the right place had taken longer than he had anticipated, and the sun was already low in the sky. While he truly did not fear the ghouls, he equally truly had a rational concern about being near one of their warrens after sunset. Between threats and a large Webley, he could keep a horde of them back for hours, but threats and a less imminent engine of extermination such as his sword offered no such certainty. A decision to forego the directions in an attempt to cut corners turned out to be unwise, and he wasted still more time while he backtracked first to where he had made the rash decision and then to the circus. The shadows were long indeed by the time Cabal finally arrived at the old cemetery, where ghouls reputedly cavorted and a witch made her home. The city of Loneth had stood in the dreamlands for as long as men have dreamed, and they have been dreaming for a very, very long time. It was a different place then, of course. Crude and barbaric as those who dreamed it were crude and barbaric. But even from the first, it had known death. The necropolis was just a plot of land then, in which the dead were interred with a few grave goods, their resting places marked with sticks and rocks and bones. Over time, the sticks and bones were discarded as too ephemeral in the former case and too attractive to the local scavenging dogs in the latter. This left the stones, which grew larger, eventually sporting inscriptions of different measures of accuracy, sincerity, and spelling. These levels of increasing sophistication had traveled out like ripples from this original site until the differences became aesthetic and modish rather than fundamental. Seen from on high, however, the original burial ground still stood out like a black wart on a gray face. It had been shunned when it was first marked out, and it was shunned ground now, ancient, primal, dangerous. There had been sundry ill-omened attempts to rehabilitate the area down the centuries. Every few generations, somebody would take it into their head that the ideal place for their inhumation, that of a respective family member, friend, or client, would be the oldest part of the necropolis. The builders would enter cautiously at dawn and stampede out at dusk, spending the meantime erecting whatever tomb or crypt or mausoleum had seemed like such a good idea in the architect's office. After the things were built and occupied, they were rarely visited again, when it had become plain that, rather than civilizing the atavistic nature of the place, the new structures might as well have been built in a war zone. So, abandoned, if still remembered, these tombs, crypts, and mausolea stood around like gentry who had inadvertently wandered onto a rough pub, and there they grew grubbier as the years passed. Johannes Cabal stood at the edge of the old cemetery and paused to take in the ambiance of the place. The last shunned burial ground he had been in had been more than 2 years before, an unusually long period between shunned burial grounds and his working life. That one had been beautiful in its way, misty and artful in its slow, entropic descent into ruin. It had also borne an air of waiting for death, of hungering for new inmates, of taking the role of a great pointing skeletal hand into a misty, artful memento mori. It had not been a pleasant place to dawdle for reasons beyond its aesthetics, but it had never felt especially malign. This old cemetery, on the other hand, reeked of malevolence. There was no true path through it, nor had there ever been, just jumble and tumble, weeds and briars, markers and ancient bones, some belonging to a local scavenger dogs who had allowed their hunger to override the sense that the nature of this land was changing. The newer structures stood sloped and grimy, overwhelmed and embarrassed by their incongruity in this place of primordial death. Some had already collapsed, and from where he stood, Cabal could see a smashed marble sarcophagus on its side amid the ruin of the tomb once built to hold it. The sarcophagus was empty, which did not surprise him. In this place, it had probably been emptied within a day of the funeral ceremony. To the ghouls, these structures were not hallowed resting places. They were larders. Cabal loosened his sword in its scabbard and walked slowly forward. He wished he had a canteen of water with him. He was probably going to be speaking ghoulish soon, and it always played havoc with his larynx. Some water to moisten his vocal cords would have been very helpful. He took up station upon a mound under which lay the moldering bones of a tribal shaman, and waited as the shadows flowed like ghost blood and the darkness grew deep. He was not sure when he first became aware of the eyes that watched him. They did not blink, nor did they move, but they watched him with unwavering intent, as their faint phosphorescent glow and unhealthy greenish yellow slowly made them stand out from the growing gloom. While there was still light in the sky, he knew they would be too cautious to attack, so he decided that now would be a good time to start his entreaty to them. He cleared his throat and began with a creditable attempt at meeping. I bear you no ill will. I only seek counsel with one who lives in this place. My name is... I have told you once before, said the ghoul voice from the shadows, and it spoke in English. I know who you are, Johannes Cabal. Ah, said Cabal, his concern at the reappearance of the ghoul who had spoken to him in Arkham at least slightly offset by his relief that he could speak a more civilized tongue. Guten Abend. We meet again, it seems. You still have me at a disadvantage, though. Only one, Herr Cabal. You are surrounded by 60 of my brethren. Your disadvantages multiply. I have made provision for that, lied Cabal. No, I am more interested in who you are. Who I am is what I am, and I am a ghoul. That is all there is to me, and I am content in that. Obviously, I'm delighted that you have found satisfaction in your current employment, but you hide in semantics, as you wish then. Who were you? A pause. Then, does it matter? It might. Another pause. I forget. It all seems a long time ago when I walked in the light and ate burned meat. There was a liquid, throaty growl from the other ghouls, a sound Cabal knew to denote disgust. From a race that routinely ate gamey human cadavers, it wasn't a sound that received much use. And vegetables. The liquid, throaty growl sounded again, louder this time. Cabal noted that the ghoulish language certainly maintained a higher level of incipient threat than human languages. It was hard to imagine 60 people managing to be so menacing while chorusing, "Ew." Cabal did not believe for an instant that the ghoul had truly forgotten its human identity, but they were inclined towards a wanton abstruseness. When one is a burrow-dwelling anthropophagus, and one must seek entertainment wherever one can, so the ghouls had raised the sport of being mysterious to a level worthy of admittance to the Olympic Games. Not that they would ever actually turn up, they would just send some cryptic clues to the opening ceremony, hinting that they might. Thus, this ghoul was almost certainly hiding its identity for some reason. That was comforting, as it implied that since the ghoul had a long-term plan for Cabal, it would not spoil it by eating him. At least, not by eating him prematurely. It was a toxic sort of guarantee, but for a man in Cabal's profession, it was much better than he was used to. As the ghoul did not wish to discuss its personal history at this juncture, Cabal decided that it was permissible to skip the pleasantries and get on to the real reason for his visit. "There is one who lives here, who I believe lives here." "You speak of the witch," said the ghoul, barely before Cabal had finished. "Yes, she is here." Cabal was too shrewd to be elated by this statement. The ghoul had specifically not said that she lived here, only that she was there. It might mean nothing, or it might mean everything. "She lives here?" he said with some emphasis. "She lives," said the ghoul, and Cabal thought he heard a note of amusement. "Ah," he thought, "so teasing people as to whether somebody's alive or dead is what passes for humor in ghoul circles." Then the ghoul said, "You must speak with her. It is your destiny." Cabal's hackles rose slightly. In his experience, people who talked in terms of destiny were those without sufficient reason to be doing what they were doing. Not so very long ago, he had suffered the misfortune of being in conversation with a military man intent on starting a war with his country's neighbors. He had spoken in terms of destiny, too, because if that had been forbidden him, he would have had to admit that his motives were little better than rape, pillage, and seizing the land of others. Calling it destiny made it seem so much more noble. So it has always been, and so it will always be. As if understanding his reserve, the ghoul said, "If you prefer, it would be wise to speak with her." "Just to be clear," said Cabal, "do you mean wise purely as it's pertaining to wisdom, or was it just an implied threat with a flavor of or else about it?" There was another pause. Cabal thought he heard the ghoul sigh. "Which will induce you to speak to the witch, Johannes Cabal?" Cabal thought about it for a moment. "Under the circumstances, either." "Then it hardly matters, does it?" The ghoul was beginning to sound angry now. "You are just as contrary as your reputation suggests." "What reputation?" asked Cabal, slightly taken aback. It counts for something when ghouls consider one in for a dig. "Go beyond the Jade Pagoda and look for the firelight. You will go unmolested by my people, but go quickly." The glowing eyes vanished quickly in scatterings of pairs. In moments, the sense of being observed lifted from Cabal, and he knew the ghouls were gone. Breathing a sigh that might have been of exasperation or might have been of relief, Cabal looked around until he found a pagoda a few yards into the clutter of tombs. It stood some 60 yards tall and was decorated with great slabs of jade. One lay by the pagoda's base, along with the tools that a foolish thief had used to remove it. It seemed that they had found to their cost that this particular part of the necropolis had no need for night watchmen. Cabal walked slowly around it, pausing en route for a moment when something that he suspected was part of the thief crunched under his foot, and finally reached the rear of the structure. The firelight was easily visible from there, flickering by a Grecian temple that had been built by students of Socrates, according to logical paradoxes rendered in architectural form. Given this provenance, it was no surprise that it had long since fallen over. Amid the tumbled columns, a figure sat upon a large bust of Socrates, at his most disgruntled. She wore a black cloak that made her outline difficult to discern against the encroaching shadows, made deeper around her by the inconstant light from the fire. As Cabal approached, he saw she was wearing her cloak's hood over her brow and eyes. He could see the pale skin and red lips of a young woman, but little else. "Pardon me, madam," he said in uncertain tones of a store detective running in a dowager duchess. "Are you, and I hesitate to use the term, a witch?" She smiled, and while it was a pleasing smile in purely aesthetic terms, there was something knowing about it that he did not like. It reminded him of the peasant girl with the lamb's smile, not in appearance so much as in import. "What were you expecting, Johannes Cabal?" she said. "Somebody uglier? Wartier?" That smile again. "Sluttier?" "Who are you?" he asked. "Do I know you?" She shook her head slowly. "No, we've never met, although you may know me by reputation." Cabal grimaced. "It's all reputations around here." "Not around here. Back there." And he knew she was speaking of the waking world. "You need a clue. Very well. Do you recall the last little book of Darius?" "The Opusculus 5? What of it?" Realization was sudden. He somehow rallied his dignity in the face of astonishment. "Madam, I was very much under the impression that you were dead." "Death is a very relative term here, sweetie." Cabal was briefly unsure whether to be more rocked by the discovery that he was talking to a woman whom he knew, beyond all reasonable doubt, was dead, or being called sweetie. He decided sweetie could wait. "Miss Smith? That is you, then?" "Smith. That is a name I haven't heard in a very long time. Here I am simply the witch of the old cemetery, and it suffices." "I heard that you killed yourself when they came for you." "Then you heard the ramblings of ignorant minds. I was not dead, only sleeping. The Opusculus 5 contained a formula for a certain narcotic that allowed dream travel here into the dreamlands, even for somebody unskilled in focused dreaming. I was in a coma, as they would have discovered if they had had a doctor with them." "Yes," said Cabal gravely. "Torch-bearing mobs tend to be very weak on bringing along medical personnel." "The first I knew that something was wrong was when the ritual of return failed, and I realized that it was because I had no body to return to. Tell me, Johannes, what did they do to me?" "Outside, they had hanged you in effigy, so..." "There was a rope handy. How cowardly. And what became of my body?" "They realized belatedly that they were in a lot of trouble, buried you in a shallow grave, and disappeared back to their homes to carry on the charade of being decent people." She cocked her head slightly, and Cabal had the unnerving feeling that she could see him perfectly well, despite the lowered cowl. "And how is it that you know all this detail, Johannes?" "You know full well that I wanted the Opusculus 5 for myself. I have the first 4 volumes, but they are of limited use without the 5th. "Let me guess. You ransacked my rooms after the coast was clear, but you did not find it." "Because it was not there," said Cabal, finally feeling better about his searching skills. "And when you could not find it, you cut your losses by taking my body for experimental material." Cabal blanched. The witch laughed with delight and pointed at him. "Ha! Just an educated guess, Johannes. It's what I'd have done in your position." She paused. "Oh, God! You've seen me naked." "You made a very beautiful corpse," said Cabal, making an ill-judged attempt at gallantry. She smiled at his discomfort, but it was not a cruel smile. "So here we are." Then the smile slipped away, and she said in the steady, forceful voice of an oracle, "Johannes Cabal, you are in terrible danger. You should never have accepted the commission of the Fear Institute. You should never have come to the Dreamlands. Now it is too late to avoid. You must face the coming dangers. You are a scientist and the very idea of destiny is anathema to you, but there is more than one sort of destiny. Yours is not predetermined, but it is a narrow path. You must cleave to this path, for if you step from it, you will fall. Cabal listened, impressed despite himself. And how will I know this path? Your own will shall guide you. You must search for the phobic animus, and you must find it. You must do so with urgency and determination, never permitting distractions, never losing your way. But there will be false leads, wasted time. How can I be sure that I am staying on the path? To err is human, Johannes. Mistakes do not matter as long as they are honest, as long as you never, ever hesitate or give up. Do you understand me? Cabal was thinking hard. Why are you doing this? Why are you helping me? Because this is the Dreamlands, and we all have a role to play here. You are the hero on the quest, and I am the wise woman who gives you counsel. She laughed, breaking character. Neither of us is ideal for our job, but you just have to do what you can. Then why don't you just tell me where the phobic animus is, Miss Smith? Oh, lots of reasons. First, that would make this a really short quest. Oh, here's the Holy Grail. It was down the back of the sofa the whole time. Secondly, I honestly don't know where it is. Wise isn't the same as omniscient, you know? Third, one of your little pals is going to turn up at your meeting tomorrow with a strong lead. You should follow it. Cabal frowned suspiciously. I thought you said that you're not omniscient. I'm not. I'm just very well informed. And this is the extent of your power? Scientia potentia est. You have a spy network and ghouls for bodyguards. He sighed. You have no power to divine the future, so all that dramatic soothsaying was just that. Drama? I am doing a great deal for you, Cabal, even if you don't realize it yet. As for power, the Dreamlands are different. Her voice had become dangerously calm. A few weeks ago, a thief came here to steal jade from the pagoda. I like the pagoda, and told him to leave or face the consequences. He didn't leave. So you set the ghouls on him. Yes, I stood on his skull. How big a fool do you think that thief was? He came in broad daylight. Cabal furrowed his brow in surprise. The sun would drain the life from a ghoul. No, it wasn't the ghouls that made his eyes boil in his head, or his roasting flesh peel from his bones. She lifted her face a little, and as she did so, her cowl fell back far enough for him to glimpse her eyes. Then he knew she was telling him no more than the truth. Not that the ghouls thanked me for doing their job, she concluded. They hate cooked meat. You should go now, Johannes. There's nothing more I can tell you. Cabal coughed awkwardly. Thank you. She shook her head slowly. No, don't thank me. I'm sending you into the worst trial of your life, and the only consolation is that the alternative is infinitely worse. I'm sorry. I wish it wasn't like this. You've attracted attention of the wrong sort now, and there's no going back. Cabal nodded grimly. Nyarlathotep. Don't say that name here, she snapped. I may have power, but I'm a long way short of bulletproof, and I don't need that sort of trouble. Then she laughed, surprising Cabal. You know, I never got into the hang of thee and thou and prithee and all that sort of stuff. Bulletproof. I guess I'm just too modern for this place. She sobered a little and regarded Cabal through shadowed eyes. But you're right. You've caught on about him already, eh? You always were a clever one. The best rival a girl could hope for. I was so pleased with myself for nicking the Opusculus 5 before you. I knew you had the other 4. You must have been so pissed off with me. Mildly, said Cabal with an extravagant understatement. I'm sure. Look, you remember that town on the high street? There's a branch of Winwick's Bank with a safety deposit facility. You want box number 313. I can't give you the key, but I doubt that will slow you down. A gift from me, Johannes. I hope you live to enjoy it. On the way out, Cabal happened upon 2 men doing a poor job of hiding bags of tools behind their backs. They looked at him, then back along the way he had come with some consternation. "Excuse us," said one, "but have you just come from the old cemetery?" "Yes," said Cabal, casually resting his hand on his sword hilt in a not especially casual way. The 2 men looked at where his hand lay, and the option of impromptu mugging was almost palpably crossed off their inner to-do list. "And you didn't see no ghouls about?" Cabal was interested, if not surprised, to see that even here, the vast majority of criminals were stunningly stupid. "No," he said with a pleasant sense of duplicitous honesty. "There were certainly no ghouls around just now. I was just admiring a magnificent jade pagoda there, and I felt entirely safe." The 2 men grinned at one another, thanked Cabal hastily, and trotted off in the direction of the old cemetery. He watched them go with no ambivalent feelings. "A gift from me, Miss Smith." Then he continued on his way. Surviving fragments of Cyril W. Clone's manuscript for The Young Person's Guide to Cthulhu and His Friends, Number 2, Nyarlathotep, the Crawling Chaos. Oh, Nyarlathotep is such a naughty god, full of wheezes and wizard pranks, which often involve wizards. He is more fun than the human mind can comprehend, so all we poor mortals can understand of his jolly clever jokes is the agony and suffering and the blood of the madness. Yes, humans just don't have much of a sense of humor, I'm afraid. Now, Nyarlathotep is one of the outer gods who are terrifically powerful, and see we humans as less than germs, which is only right. Nyarlathotep is super special, though, because he has lots of different faces and lots of different personalities. It must be so much fun to wake up in the morning and decide not only who you will be today, but even what species you will be. If you were Nyarlathotep, what form would you like to have today? I think I'd like to be a dense, oily mist that could creep into people's homes as they slept and give them acute radiation burns. That would be a splendid jape, wouldn't it? He has lots of names, too, to go with every mask he wears, but really, he is always good old Nyarlathotep. He isn't just a very funny clown, though. He is also the soul of the outer gods and their messenger, so he is terribly, terribly busy. But don't worry. Nyarlathotep always finds time to play his tricks. What fun! And that was it for Chapter 5. What do you all think? How do we feel about it? Are we enjoying it? Are we enjoying it? Do you hate it? Do you want to leave? You can at any time. No one's holding you here. I like The Witch. I also like The Witch. Straight up, Elizabeth Smith is my favorite character. Thank you for the gifts. Really? Thank you. I like knowing that I did a good job. Well, you already know, Dad. You already know. I like the ghoul, too. You relate to the witch. You would be great friends. I don't want to go into details, but she does come back. And, some of the stuff she can do, I feel like you would get along like a house on fire. Quite literally, any house with you two in it may cause a fire. So be careful. You'll find out later. You find out. You do find out. There is an answer. So, but I'm not going to spoil it. That's a major spoiler for later on. T Galaxies knows. Thanks, T Galaxies. Sharing in this. If you already read ahead or read this book before we started reading it, you know. And if you've been reading ahead and you got to it before now, congratulations. You don't get to experience it with the rest of the people who haven't, because that's going to be a major bomb drop and you ruined it for yourself. Makes you feel sleepy when you need to sleep. Excellent. That's what I'm here for. I put people to sleep. That's my primary motivation. You remember. You remember. You remember who the ghoul is. Don't give me that. But yeah, it's gonna get fun. I have major content planned for this book almost. Like, I have so much content exclusively for Fear Institute that I want to shoot, which makes me really excited. It's sort of ambitious though. I'm gonna need some new contacts for it. I just know. I have so many ideas. It's gonna be fun for when I get to cosplay it. Once I get my life put back together and I can save money again, actually put money aside to do all this stuff. Thank you. I like one year when I was in school, I think it was 6th grade, I'm not sure. But we would do that thing, you know, where you're all in a class and you're reading a book and they would call on different people to read like a set amount of paragraphs or like a page or whatever. And we were doing that, and almost exclusively from the point in time that I like ended up reading, a bunch of people were like, can you just read the entire book? I like the way you do the voices. And then it got to the point where the teacher was like, okay, they can't read the entire book, guys. Because it would be to the point where, like, you would call on another person and then they would read and continue, and then everybody would pick me, and it got real weird. I was like, quit. The whole goal was to not draw attention to myself, and everybody keeps calling me. At least I get you to rest, at least. Because as a person with insomnia, I understand sometimes you're just not going to be able to sleep. And at least you're, like, laying down and relaxing your muscles and sort of just getting as much rest as you can out of it. It sort of takes the stress out, because I've been that insomniac that's like, you have 4 hours. You have 4 hours. If you fall asleep right now, you have 4 hours. And then you have 3 hours. If you fall asleep right now, you have 3 hours. And all that does is make you more anxious and less likely to put you to sleep. And the more you just sort of relax into it and find something calming to listen to or watch, the more likely you are to at least get rest, even if you don't fall asleep. Popcorn reading. Yeah, that's what it was called. I forgot the name of it. Yeah, that was always supposed to be the point, is you're supposed to make sure that, like, kids are paying attention. And our teacher would always let us pick the next person, like Red Rover style, you know? So whoever read previously would then be like, call them. And every once in a while she would be like, so-and-so hasn't read in a while, let's let so-and-so read. But then when everybody started calling me, she would try that and people would get mad. So then eventually they were just like, I guess they can read it. And I just ended up reading half of that book. Yeah, that's me. That would be me. Is you always time yourself and you watch the clock and then you're like, all right, I have 2 hours. I have 2 hours left. If I fall asleep right now, I can at least get like a decent nap. And then you don't because you've gotten yourself so anxious. So I get it. And I've been there. So if this is your ASMR sleepy time, relax time, then I'm glad I could help, even if I don't put you to sleep. If it's getting you to relax, it's accomplishing something. So you got in trouble for talking too fast? I never got in trouble for that, but I would try and get out of it routinely. I was like, are you kidding? I read 2 whole chapters. I'm thirsty. I gotta go. Like, can I go to the bathroom? I did not. I love reading, but like, especially in school, I always tried to like fly under the radar. Like, the less attention I draw, the less likely I am to get stabbed. And so I would just try and draw as little attention as possible. It routinely never worked. Sounding too British. Somehow I feel like that's intentional. Especially when you're reading in public or reading out loud to like a group of people and they're in the room, gives you more anxiety somehow, and then you start speeding up. And a lot of people just do that as an anxiety response where you speed up. Stuttering too. It's really hard to do popcorn reading for people with dyslexia, and I always felt for those kids that were like, I can't, they move, the letters aren't in the right, and they would struggle and people would like make fun of them, and I was like, all right, y'all are just, really? You can't do math. This is no different. Oh, okay, the British thing. I was like trying to understand what that sentence was saying, and I was like, what? That would make sense. Are you too British when you sing? Yeah, see, like, that's always really almost traumatic depending on how young you are. As you get older, I feel like you get more desensitized to stuff like that. Like you're just like, ah, fuck it, whatever, that's the way I need to live my life. But when you're younger, especially, like, just formative embarrassment is real shitty. Now that makes sense, the British thing. The letters don't move, but numbers do. My cousin had that, where numbers would move around. But I feel like it's just not right to make fun of people for like struggles with learning separate things or different things with different subjects, because a lot of people who, everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses, and making fun of somebody is just you projecting your own insecurity anyway. You could just say nothing and continue to live your life. I don't know why that was so hard for a lot of people, but a lot of people have that. And so I think, like, and I like that we're all normalizing it now, because I grew up in like the early 90s where it was really easy for that stuff to fly under the radar. And even when they did try and tell you or notify you that your child may have had some sort of learning disability or mental disorder or anything like that, like I remember when my cousin got diagnosed with ADD, and her mother, my aunt, was like, no, she's not. No, not my daughter. Not my daughter. My daughter is supposed to be perfect. And neither one of us have ADD. And neither does her sister. So she's fine. And I was like, that's not the way that works. But it was just really easy for anytime they did try and help diagnose your child, parents could just see it as more of an embarrassment on them than anything else. Or like, I don't want to deal with that. I'll just beat my child, thanks. It'll be fine. It was real wild. So I'm glad there's more stuff like that's being normalized, because the only solution at the time was get made fun of by most of your class. And maybe if you had a good teacher, they tried to tell your parents about it. Keyword being tried. And sometimes parents were supportive and helped. And other time, parents were like my aunt and just been like, no, they're fine. They're fine. I don't know what you're talking about. So therapy and treatment for mental disorders and learning disabilities has become a lot more normalized, and I think that's awesome. Because there's so much support now. Where, like, if you even think that you have some, even if no one mentions it, or like, your parents are more proactive now, I think. Like, a friend I know, their mother was like, yeah, I think your younger sister has like ADHD. And they were like, you didn't think I had ADHD? Like, you didn't care about getting me treated. And like, it was a whole big thing. And they had this big showdown with their mom. It was really unnecessary. 90s logic, exactly. 90s logic. So everything could be just smothered. We could just repress all that. You repress it. You're just like, it's fine. They would have noticed sooner. No. Do you remember how it was back then? No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. Even if somebody did. No, not being able to see until he was 15. Not everything, Dad. Just the depression. No, I'm joking. Don't repress that. Get a therapist. A licensed professional to help you. No, don't repress anything. You could just get medication now. Why would you not want to get Adderall and be super productive? A lot of people have that problem where you just don't physically display any shortcomings, so people rationally just assume you're fine. People don't often look for behavioral differences and things like that would make those things obvious if they were paying an iota of attention, but people just don't. They don't want to pay attention to anything that they don't have to. And unfortunately, being consciously aware of how you impact other people has gone by the wayside for most. You're not hyper enough to have ADD. That's a good classic. We're just rolling out the hits today. There are answers to some issues, Swiftblood, not all. Get a therapist. There's something in my eye. I'm gonna touch my eye on camera. Should not do that. People are gonna get real freaked out. Me touching my whole eyeball on camera with my fingernail. Everybody who has issues with eyes, don't look. Arson. And a lot of people don't get that. I had one of the reasons I picked Anxious Undertaker as my username is I am less anxious now than I was 4 or 5 years ago. I've had extensive therapy and a lot of treatment, but I was a full Tamaki in public. Anytime I had to go anywhere. I remember when I was like, I need help. My finally, like, I need help moment was my mother, who I have a limited relationship with at present. Her birthday was coming up, and I went to go to, it was like Bath and Body Works, because I knew like what scent she gets and like everything, and I went to go get her one of like the gift bags with all the shit. I went in there to get her something, and when I got there was some sort of sale that I hadn't anticipated, and it wasn't even that crowded, but it was crowded enough for my anxiety brain to go off, and I have a huge issue with crowds, especially. And I was like, I want to go home. And I freaked out. And I got back in my car. And I freaked out in my car. And I went home empty-handed. And then I just told my mother I forgot her birthday. I was like, I need help. I can't even go to any place that is crowded. Everything I do is at night, when almost everything is closed and nothing is busy. I do all my grocery shopping at night. I do everything at night. Everything at night. Nothing during the day, because then during the day there's people. And I used to be severe Tamaki. Very severe. And so one of the reasons I chose my username was actually based off of like the anxiety that I used to have, because this was also sort of an exercise. Me getting on TikTok was also sort of an exercise in dealing with public anxiety, because this is in a limited capacity. You all aren't in my room with me right now. If you were, I can't guarantee that I wouldn't freak out. I like to think I've come a very long way. In 4 or 5 years, and my chief concern is that 17 of you could not fit comfortably in this room, would be my number one concern, actually, at this point. But a few years ago, I would have just had a panic attack. Now I'd be like, respectfully, you all gotta go. But this is in a limited capacity where I could handle being around. It's sort of public without being public. So, in a way, you all helped with my treatment. So, okay, thanks. Yeah, better online than in person. Me too. I'm really rude in person. If I ever meet you, I apologize. Escape plan. I am so glad you're bringing up the escape plan thing, because I would actively do that for everything. I would always have a person, I'd be like, okay, like an hour and I need you to call me and make something up. I was always that person. So I'm pretty sure one time I just pulled a banana out of my bag and was like, I gotta take this. And they were like, that's a banana. And I was like, I gotta go. One time I got out of something by having someone call me about a wig emergency. And the thing is that I had actually pulled that off twice. Okay? Once was someone calling me and making that up. And I was like, I gotta go, I have a wig emergency. Because that's what they said. They were making a joke and I couldn't come up with something better to pretend like it was. So that's what I reiterated. And then the second time, crazy enough, it was an actual wig emergency. A drag queen fucked up my wig. And I had to go retrieve it. So I actually got out of 2 separate obligations with the same excuse. But one of them was real, and everybody thought it was a really bogus excuse anyway, but it was actually real. Which somehow justified the second one, because the first time they were like... And then the second time they were like, you can't do this again. And I was like, no, seriously, this time it's for real. And they were like, the first time was fake? And I was like, no. And then I went, and then they all also knew the drag queen. So then it became like the standard. They were like, oh, so you really did have a wig emergency. And I was like, yeah. Yeah, he ripped a whole track out of this wig. I had to go. Like, and then that became like normalized. So then people then just became, like, it became like a joke. They were like, how long until you have a wig emergency? And I was like, probably like 30 minutes.
Oh my god.
He was trying to, I'm not quite sure. I do know that he said he was going to take some length off of it. And I said, that's fine. Do you know what you're doing? Because I don't really have the time this week to come and get it. And he was like, no, I know exactly what I'm doing. And I was like, okay. And I've loaned this wigs to this person before, and they had taken very good care of them. So I was okay with it at the time. This time, however, I legit got a call from him about an hour into this event, and he was like, hey, so look, nothing's wrong, but... And I could hear, like, bathwater running in the background. And I was like, what's up? And he's like, well, you know the red wig, the red one, the ginger wig that you lent me? And I was like, uh-huh. And he was like, and I said I was gonna cut it. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, well, I did, but it looked uneven. And so I was gonna try and style it different. Anyway, long story short, I accidentally ripped part of the tread out. I was like, excuse me? And he was like, it was an accident. And I was like, how do you accidentally do that? He was like, well, it did not go well. I just let him keep it. It was ruined. I got there to see if I could fix it. It was terrible. It was a really nice wig too. I was really upset. Cost me so much money. I was like, I'm never loaning you anything again. And I never did. He was off my list. But that's my dumb story for the night. But yeah, I actually got out of a party twice with that excuse that I didn't want to be at. But yeah, no, the time with the banana, I used to date someone who was very irresponsible with his potassium. And he would get a whole bunch of bananas every single week and eat one of them and then leave the rest to go bad. And I have a huge problem with food waste. I was always told, you know, you don't waste food. And so I can't even eat bananas now to this day because of this guy. But before I went anywhere, I was like, I would always look at these bananas, and I'm like, somebody's got to eat these bananas before they go bad. Got to be me. It's got to be me, because he's not. So I'd take one and I'd put it in a bag and like go to class or whatever and do my thing, and then I would just have a banana in my bag like all the time, and I would find it normally like hours later, and I'm like, oh yeah, snack, and I would eat the banana. And it got to the point where I actually really hated bananas, and I would carry them with me, and I didn't even want them. And I was like, oh, I hate carrying around all these bananas, and I don't want to waste them. And I would repeatedly be like, just get one banana. Like, you can take them off of the bun. And he was like, no, you can't. You can't do that. I was like, yes, you can. You can separate one or two and get those. You don't have to get the whole. And he was like, no, you're not supposed to do that. I was like, who said? Who said? They're built by weight. They're built by weight. You don't have to. You just take them off and then weigh those, and it charges you by weight. Whatever. And so I would put bananas in my bag, and I had like a reception for art show or whatever that I had to go to, and I was there, and I was like, I gotta go. Actually, I don't want to be here. I'm gonna go back to my dorm room, and I'm gonna watch probably half a season of Lie to Me and read Game of Thrones until I pass out on top of my book. And I wanted to leave, and so I was digging in my bag for my phone to like pretend I had a phone call, and I couldn't find it, and I grabbed the wrong thing, and I pulled out a banana, and I was like, I gotta take this. And they were like, that's a banana. And at that point, you're just faced with the dilemma of like, do I act embarrassed and like apologize and stay there locked in this embarrassment that I've just experienced? Or do I just keep going and own it? What are they gonna do? So then I was like, I gotta take this. And they were like, that's a banana. And I was like, yeah, it's very important. I have to go. And then I stepped outside with my banana phone and left. And I stand by it. And if it was circa 2011 and you happen to be at a reception for an event in Kentucky, that was a public performance dance recital that I was locked into doing makeup for several hours, and you happen to see a real weirdo that had like a cloud strife haircut and biohazard goggles pull a banana out of their backpack and say that they had to go. Now you know I was lying. That banana phone wasn't an important call. I made that up. And now you know. No, you don't. It was terrible. Anyway, that's my real dumb story for tonight. Collective banana hatred. There are other ways to get potassium. Eat some potatoes. Anyway, I'm just so anti-banana now. Ow, my back. I'm getting it digested tomorrow. It's fine. Yeah, but I would hazard to say that the people that were there didn't really think it was epic. I'm pretty sure they were just like, did that just happen? And like all laughed, you know? I didn't really care. They were a bunch of dancers. Dancers are stupid. Dancers are stupid. I once saw a dancer put brush cleaner on their face thinking it was astringent. I said what I said. You know how many dancers I have seen do real dumb shit? And no, not all dancers are stupid. Some dancers are actually very nice, kind, and smart people. But they are in the minority. And I stand by that. But I'm never going to resolve myself to an absolute all dancers are stupid. Not all of them. But a majority? Yeah. I had a dancer put brush cleaner in his face thinking it was astringent. I also had another one pick up a tripod thinking it was a prop when it was a full metal tripod, and then drop it on his foot and break his toe. I also had a dancer try to open a umbrella for a dance in Oklahoma and couldn't figure out how to do it. So someone had to go and instruct them on how to open their umbrella. He was like, I don't know, it's very complicated. If it was a real umbrella. They were real umbrellas. They were real. A lot of props are just the actual items. They aren't props. They're actual umbrellas. They were not. No. Yeah, no, I've met a lot of dumb dancers that I've had to go and assist. I've also had to do their laundry, and they all stink. Now, that I will say is an absolute. Every dancer stinks to high heaven. And I know that because you can't say you didn't stink, Swiftblood. That you cannot deny. I'm going to tell you right now, because every dancer, and they can't help it. I know that's not their fault. That's a normal bodily function. You're supposed to do that when you get hot. And they do, all over themselves. Until you watch a whole 50 dance troupes worth of leotards and underwear, nothing stinks as bad as that. Nothing. You can't tell me you've smelled something worse until you've smelled that. I've smelled roadkill that smelled better than that dance troupe's underwear. Because you got to think about it. They're under real heavy lights. Those lights are hot. And they're doing a lot of physical movement. Ballerinas are nasty. Nasty, especially ballerinas. So you're under really heavy light, caked in makeup, and wearing, it seems like they're not wearing a lot. They're actually wearing a lot of clothing. It just doesn't look like it because all you see is the leotard. So ballerinas, they're doing all that twirly shit and jumping around. They get hot as heaven under those hell-ass lights and fucking sweating through their underwear, sweating through their whole leotard. They get out. All of it is already wet, sopping wet. And every single one of them throws their leotard in the same hamper. And I'd have to cart it upstairs and do all their laundry. Sometimes I would be there until about 4, 5 in the morning. And I always ended up getting stuck with that job because I was the only person who never dictated a time because I had insomnia. So they were like, you know who can't afford to stay up all night? Toshi. Toshi can do all the laundry. Sure. Toshi can do all the laundry. Anyway, dancers stink. They're disgusting. You know what? I wish we had an institute like that. Like, that would have been fantastic. Take your own goddamn stinky ass leotard home. Do it yourself. Then you only have to do one. You only do yours. Instead, it's me doing about 10 loads of laundry. I'm getting flashbacks. We gotta stop. It sticks with you, man. It sticks with you. But I would sit up there in the costuming office. We had a couple different sets of washers and dryers. I would sit up there and I would drink. We had in the costuming department, we had one lady whose office was up there. She'd let us use her office. And she always had tea and like an electric tea kettle up there. I'd make tea all night. Do my homework. Do like 5 loads of laundry as in dancer's clothing. Sit up there, read, drink all of her tea. All of it. Cup after cup of tea. And I don't regret stealing her tea. Because she hated me and she wanted me to do all the laundry. That's probably because I just made myself available. I just didn't think about it. But yeah, for almost an entire semester, I had to do all the dancers' clothing for every dance show we had. And we did like 4 dance shows a year. Yeah, you make me do this, I'm going to steal your tea. That's all there is to it. Say goodbye to your tea. It was good tea, too. That was fun. I had some really good tea there that I know I'm never going to find again either. So I was like, man, I wish I remember the name of that one tea. Yeah. It's me. I stole tea for my pain and suffering. That was the price. It's tea. Honestly, I feel like I could have asked for a whole lot more, but I did not. I was nice about it. Oh yeah, like real swanky tea. Real nice tea. And I was like, I gotta get me some more of that tea. I don't want to hang out with her to get it, but I do want that tea. You know what I mean? Anyway, I made a habit out of it. So what? She never confronted me about it either. We were allowed to drink a little bit of tea, but I know I went way overboard. She was like, you can have like a tea bag or something. And I'm like, okay, a tea bag. All right. And then I'd have like 50. I drink so much tea while I was down there. Cereal bars and yeah, steal food. Anytime there's like a craft services, steal everything. Steal everything. A tea bag an hour. Yeah. I never even got to like try and swerve it in that fashion either because she literally never brought it up either. So I feel like she would come in and be like, I gotta swear him. Who did costumes last night? And then would look and then like passive aggressively. Maybe it's just me reading too much into it, but I feel like she would be very passive aggressive to me. Maybe that's just me reading too much into it. Yeah. Don't regret it. Now you all know my terrible secret. And if you ever meet somebody that was like, yeah, I was at a party in Kentucky with this one bitch who answered a banana. It's me. I'm bitches. Yeah. She could have done the fucking laundry. Anyway. Are we ready for this next chapter? What we doing? Did y'all see that? What the? You know I do Swift Bloods. I have a couple sites I want to try out that people have sent me, and then send me all the T-Rex. Send me all the T-Rex. I love tea. All right. Now we're going to move on to chapter 6. In which the expedition crosses the sea and Cabal takes an interest in the leg of a sailor. They met as arranged the next day and immediately retired to an alehouse where they could drink wine or beer or local tea as they so desired and eat seed cakes as they told of what they had discovered, all but Cabal, who said that he had researched the strange glitch in time they had experienced but had discovered nothing of use. This was true in a largely false way. He had asked a stable hand, who had said he'd never heard of the like. Then again, the stable hand had likely never heard of Damascus, apoplexy, or soap, but as no one queried Cabal on the size or demographics of his sample, he did not feel the need to burden them with such details. Cabal's disappointing luck aside, everyone had something exciting to report. Bosie was the first. I spoke with the archive keeper and asked him if he had ever heard tell of something called the phobic animus. Hardly likely, said Cord, since we coined the term. Or anything similar, continued Bosie a little testily. He had sort of known of something known as the frozen heart, which is described as being the epitome of all fears. The frozen heart, said Cabal. He was looking out of the window, drinking his tea slowly. His seed cake sat untouched. How poetic. Yes, that was what I thought, said Bosie happily, entirely missing Cabal's tone. This whole world is built on poetic principles. That is what led me to believe in the veracity of the line of research. I asked if these reports had a specific locale or locales associated with them, and they do. He produced a rolled-up piece of parchment from his sleeve and unfurled it on the tabletop. At its head, he had written in careful block capitals, likely list of places, shunned. Beneath it was a list of perhaps 20 locations. Well, it's a start, said Shadrach uncertainly, but those places must be hundreds of miles apart. Checking every one of them will take months, if not years, subjectively speaking, at least. This one's handy, said Cord. It's the old cemetery right here in Loneth. We can go there now. You can cross that one off, said Cabal with a bored languor he did not feel. I went there myself last night. They all looked at him in astonishment. He shrugged. I'm a necromancer. Cemeteries and the like are my meat and drink. Not literally, though, said Shadrach, smiling. Cabal gave him a dusty look. One has to drop in. It's a professional courtesy. There's nothing there but a bunch of old ghouls and a mad woman who fancies herself a witch. The ghouls seem to believe it, as they leave her alone. Cord looked skeptical. You just strolled in and had a chinwag with some ghouls? Hardly a chinwag. I walked in, they threatened to eat me, I threatened to destroy them. There was some saber rattling, literally in my case, and that was that. And then what? And then I had my dinner. White wine and chicken al fresco upon the tomb of a pair of tragic star-crossed lovers. Cord was not sure if Cabal was toying with him. And that was all? Alas, yes, I had wanted some cheese, but couldn't find it at short notice. It's a shame. Cheese goes so well with tragedy. Cord stared hard at Cabal, and it took Shadrach's proclamation of his own results to regain his attention. I was invited to dinner at the Merchant Adventurers Hall last night, he said with due deference to his own importance. This truly is a fascinating world, mixed from the epic poems of Greece and the sagas of the Vikings and the 1001 Nights of Scheherazade and the mystical tales of the Orient and the dream time of the Antipodean aboriginals. I heard so many strange stories, but none of the enemies. One place came up in conversation, however, by all accounts a terrible place, and it may be the one. He drew Bosey's list to him and cast an eye down on it. There, the sixth one down, Oriab Island. There was supposed to be some ruins where something terrible happened once upon a time, although nobody seems to know what. Cabal already had his bag open and his notes folder out. Oriab Island is not small, and the ruins might be anywhere. We need more exact information before investing effort in going there. The ruins are on the banks of Lake Yath, said Cord a little smugly. He leaned back in his chair and took a decent draught from his flagon of beer before elaborating. I got, talking to some sailors. What you do in your own time, muttered Cabal. And they said Oriab Island was the place to go. Not because there's much likelihood of the Animus being there, but because in the ruins by Lake Yath lives a hermit. He'll speak to one person a year and will answer one question that they ask. Doesn't matter what it is. He will always know the answer. The others considered this. How do we know that nobody has already asked him this year? Said Shadrach. Because, said Cord with a wily grin, nobody has asked him a question for at least 2 years. And the person who asked on that occasion died shortly afterwards from his wounds. Bosey's eyes had gone very large. Wounds? He asked tremulously. There's something in the ruins that doesn't like strangers, explained Cord. That's the scuttlebutt, anyway. He took up his flagon and raised it to Shadrach, whose expression of moral outrage indicated that he thought scuttlebutt was some act of frightful sordidness. We shall have to book passage, then, said Bosey. How do we do that? I assume that we cannot simply walk into a shipping agent's and buy tickets in the same way that we travel to America. Shadrach took the opportunity to demonstrate his utility, and in so doing, distract himself from theorizing as to exactly what scuttlebuttery consisted of. I know the very man. I made his acquaintance last night, Captain Lockery, owner, master, and commander of the Edge of Dusk, a galleon. He settled back to bask in the plaudits. Galleon was putting it a little strongly. The party had proceeded down to the stout oaken wharves where stout oaken ships waited at anchor, quite possibly crewed by stout oaken sailors, because, after all, this was the Dreamlands. Almost the only thing at the docks that was not stout and oaken was the Edge of Dusk, a ship that had probably looked like it had seen better days right from the hour it was launched. It was not a galleon, that was clear to all of them, but it was Cord who correctly identified it as a cog, an earlier and smaller form of a ship. As a galleon is to a cog is to a small toy with a sail that one splashes around in the bath to amuse oneself when one is either very young or an admiral. It was something of a disappointment, but Cabal pointed out that a true galleon, when looking like a refugee from a Spanish plain fleet, would have been greatly surplus to their requirements and to their budget. The Edge of Dusk was not pretty, but she was small, and on closer inspection bore an air of competence and functionality about her that Cabal, for one, preferred to her romantic neighbors, their sails blowing like the ruffled shirt of a hero in a novel for spinsters. Captain Lockery himself was on deck as they approached the ship. He positively grinned with delight when he saw Shadrach and bounded down the gangplank to meet them. "Master Shadrach!" he cried, grasping Shadrach's hand in both of his and pumping it firmly. For Shadrach, who was used to handshakes with all the vigor of a cucumber sandwich left out in the rain, this was a surprise, and all he could manage were a couple of "oh" and "ah" in response. Lockery, who outmatched his vaguely Scottish name with an accent that would have made Robert Burns sound English by comparison, was introduced to Shadrach's companions and was polite and friendly with them all. When he reached Cabal, however, his mood faltered. He took in Cabal's clothing and said, You'll be a strong-minded one, that's plain enough. This place will be a trial to you, no doubt. Cabal remembered the witch's reference to a trial, but decided that he was not so foolish as to see meaning where there was only coincidence. It has been noted before now. Yes, thank you. Lockery shook his head. No, son, you don't understand. The Dreamlands were built by dreamers, and dreamers are what they expect. Like a body fights an infection, this world will fight you. Cabal's lips thinned. Then I shall fight back. Lockery laughed, a fatalistic laugh of the sort reserved for gladiators, soldiers on suicide missions, and explorers leaving tents who may be some time. I like your pluck, Master Cabal, but this is a world you are talking about. You can fight it, but you will lose. Cabal looked around him. I have no sense of the Dreamlands going to war with me, Captain. Do you? No black clouds, water spouts, or monsters come to destroy me. I feel no more threatened than I might on Brighton Beach. He spat into the water for punctuation. Heaven forfend. Oh, it won't be anything like that, said Lockery. But I've seen men like yourself come here, and one of two things always happens. He leaned closer and spoke in a hushed tone. The Dreamlands either destroy 'em or absorb 'em. I'd buck up your ideas and try to fit in if you don't want the lands to do it for you then. For an example, I went to sleep in the wrong opium den. Well, wrong in one sense. I don't know what they'd mixed their stuff with, but it brought me here, and I guess it killed me too. My old body, that is. No going back for old Captain Lockery, but as you can see, I fitted in. You should try to do the same, sir. Things won't go so well for you. Seeing Cabal's expression, he raised his hands in conciliation. Not a threat, son, just a friendly warning. Do you always hand out metaphysical advice to your passengers? Asked Cabal, growing a little heated. Only those that look as if they need it, said Lockery with infuriating good humor. And for the truth, you're not passengers yet. No negotiations have been made, no bargains been struck. Shadrach held up a handful of gold from his purse and said, Passage for 4 to Oriab Island, Captain Lockery. Lockery's grin widened. And now they have, and now it has. He stepped to the side and bowed them onto the gangplank. Step lively, gentlemen, the tide turns soon, and then we'll be on the way to Baharna, capital city, and it's no secret, the only city on Oriab Island, the only one standing at least. It was their second experience of nautical travel on the expedition so far, but taking passage upon a form of ship that had been obsolete for the best part of 6 centuries was a very different matter from 8 days aboard a modern steamliner. In the first instance, the Edge of Dusk was small, barely 50 tons, and lacked the comforts that Messrs. Shadrach and Bosie in particular had enjoyed so much while crossing the Atlantic. To be precise, the Edge of Dusk lacked any and all comforts, including privacy. The vessel's single toilet was a cubbyhole in the rear quarterdeck with a piece of cloth held across the entrance by 2 nails. Inside was a bench with a hole in the ocean 10 feet below. This, Captain Lockery proudly believed, was the very cutting edge of hygiene technology. Indeed, in high seas, it doubled as a bidet. This intelligence Shadrach and Bosie received in a pallid silence, while Cord laughed and Cabal looked at the horizon in the direction of Oriab Island. They would be expected to sleep in hammocks along with the crew, as Captain Lockery had a small closet aft that he called his cabin, and during the day were expected to stay at the rail and therefore out of the way as much as possible. Shadrach had suggested that since they were paying passengers, seats upon the quarterdeck might not be reasonable, but had quickly learned that, to a sailor, this was deeply unreasonable. Instead, they had grudgingly been given permission to sit on barrels on the foredeck with the proviso that they get out of the way immediately if ordered by any member of the crew. Going from ordering stewards around to being ordered around by any passing sailor was a great humiliation for Shadrach in particular, and he spent much of the first 2 days of the trip standing by the bowsprit, stony-faced and uncommunicative, to the extent that the crew started calling him the spare figurehead behind his back. The time between standing at the bowsprit he passed much as the others did, swinging unhappily in a hammock, putting off visits to the frightful cubbyhole as long as possible, and being gloriously and violently sick on a regular basis. During the Atlantic passage, they had all suffered some seasickness for the first day or so, but had quickly overcome it, and had mistakenly come to the conclusion that this was all the time necessary to find one's sea legs. Compared to the steamliner, however, the edge of dusk was like spending every hour of every day being blindfolded and lobbed at short, random intervals onto a trampoline. The horizon wantonly flung itself around at particular angles, and the contents of their stomachs followed it faithfully, even while their inner ears told them that everything else was lying, and downwards was actually this way. The crew found the sight of the passengers leaning over the rails hugely amusing in the absence of any other form of entertainment, although they quickly got a sense that it was unwise to laugh at Cabal. He never seemed particularly stricken, barking up his breakfast in a perfunctory way as if he had planned to do so all along, then strolling over to the water butt and taking a mouthful from the scoop to rinse his mouth before spitting it out over the rail to follow his bacon and biscuit. None of the crew had ever seen a man vomit in a dignified manner, and it worried them in a disquietingly undefined fashion. There was some commotion on the third day when the lookout sighted a sea serpent about a league off the port bow. Cabal barely felt it necessary to use his telescope to examine it. The creature was vast, a mile long and thicker than the edge of dusk was tall. They watched it swim by in a series of undulating humps that barely disturbed the waters, the sun glistening off the slick gray scales, unaware or uncaring of the tiny ship that sailed so near. Cord noticed the captain watching it, his arms crossed and a ruminative expression on his face. His calmness did match to still Cord's own nerves at being so close to such a giant, and he said, "I gather such creatures do not attack ships, Captain?" Are we not? Is there a connection issue? Is it on your end or is it overall? Are we good? It says green. Should I pause it? It's good. Okay, I was like, is it happening for everyone or is it just okay. Making sure it's not me. Awesome. Making sure it's not me, man. And we're back in. Lockery looked sideways at Cord and raised an eyebrow. "Oh, eh? And what makes you say that, Master Cord?" Cord laughed. "Why, your unconcerned attitude, of course. You do not look like a man who suspects imminent death." "Ah," said Lockery, returning his attention to the diminishing serpent, now beginning a descent back into its native depths. "Well, you see, if we had been in its path, it would have devoured the ship whole. They can do that, you know. And we wouldn't have been able to do a thing to stop it." "What?" Cord's sang-froid fractured abruptly. "We were in danger the whole time? How could you be so calm, man? I repeat, we would not have been able to do a thing to stop it. If we are to die, Master Cord, we can at least die well." 10 days the trip took altogether, and the majority were much like one another. Once, when the ocean grew shallow over a submarine plateau, Cord excitedly pointed out that he could see a sunken city, clearly beneath the waves. Lockery was unhappy to hear it and put a greater press upon the sails, and sooner to be clear. Nor was Cabal delighted by this unremarkable sight, refusing even to look at it, instead pacing up and down the deck, muttering about how greatly he resented the loss of his pistol. Everyone was relieved when, on the early evening of the 10th day, the lookout called, "Land ho!" and shortly thereafter, Oriab Island crept over the easterly horizon. There was significant light to study the architecture as the edge of dusk glided between two lighthouses to rival the Faroes on either side of the Baharna harbor, and approached the quayside before lowering her sails and sculling in the last few yards. Sailors leaped easily to the quay, and within a minute were tying her off to the bollards. After such a long and occasionally harrowing journey, the sense of anticlimax was intense. "Well," said Bosie as they gathered their few items of luggage brought in Llaneth, "that was an adventure in itself, sea serpents and sunken cities. Tell me, Captain, is this journey always so exciting?" Lockery considered for a moment. "No pirates this time," he said, shrugged, and then bade his passengers a good evening before returning his attention to unloading cargo. Baharna was a very different city from Llaneth, even larger. In their experience to date, the Dreamlands didn't seem to do small, except for ships, and seemed to owe less to Earth in its architecture, or at least, as Cabal commented, to any surviving architecture known on Earth. The city was terraced, but in such a way as to make the ranks of Llaneth seem very modest indeed. The streets of Baharna rose and fell steeply, and as a result were frequently stepped. The visitors guessed that loads were carried on the sharply zigzagging roads that ran across the terraced levels, but people still managed to ride up and down the interstitial stepped highways by an unexpected method. "Oh, I say," said Bosie, "that chap's riding a zebra." It seemed that the zebras of the Dreamlands, or at least the zebras of Oriab, were far more biddable creatures than their terrestrial counterparts. A smiling trader in an orange silken robe saluted them with something similar, but not exactly a salaam gesture, and rode by on his patient and sanguine zebra laden with panniers. They watched him pass, and then watched him ride off down the stepped road toward the quays. The observation grew to a slightly irritating length until it was halted by Cabal's curt, "Oh, hallelujah, we have seen a man on a zebra and may now die content." He stalked off up the hill looking for an inn the captain had told them of, and did not deign to make sure the others were keeping up. As he walked, and they pursued him in a desultory we-were-going-this-way-in-any-event sort of way, he looked up at the huge archways that bent upon the highways of the city, archways upon which stood more buildings of the same dark purplish porphyry from which much of the city seemed to be built. It gave an impression of great stolidity and great age. Cabal knew that an igneous stone like porphyry was difficult to cut. The ancient Egyptians had certainly made heavier weather of it, loathing the stuff for its hardness, but loving it for its color, finish, and resistance to the elements. Or so the mummy of a master architect had once told him during a not entirely legal experiment as a respected science academy held long after normal hours. In fact, the virtues of building materials were all that ancient worthy and had been prepared to talk about, probably because the rest of his brain was in a canopic jar somewhere. The vast quantities of the stuff in evidence here, however, raised the question of just how large a quarry would have to be opened in the side of a nearby volcano to supply such gargantuan, indeed cyclopean loads of its distinctive rock. Cabal considered the hypothesis that if all the porphyry were to be dumped neatly back into the quarries, it would produce a good-sized hill after filling the holes. In short, that most had never been mined, but dreamed into existence, long, long ago, by men or things like men. The hard stone had been chosen because it reasonably matched the environment, but mainly because it emanated permanence, and permanence in the land of sleep is better than gold in the world of wakefulness. Cabal's chosen profession meant that he must perforce dabble frequently in history and folklore and the misty hinterland between them. Over time, he had developed a sense of what was likely and what was not, which historical theories were probably true and which were bunkum. In this case, the Dreamlands stank of bunkum, a rank, musty smell like old sacking. Real history was unromantic, steeped in greed and blood and abject eye-rolling stupidity. An endless parade of putative Ozymandiases marching off to glory before snapping off at the ankles in the depth of the desert. That was human history. Every now and then there would be a pretense of civilization, but soon enough the restlessness, hateful, atavistic hearts of humanity would tear down the towers and slide back into barbarism, squealing with glee. Decadence loves the taste of blood, even though it is poison. The Dreamlands had none of that. The town squares had statues to poets and artists, philosophers and writers, not generals and statesmen. Cabal had heard of no wars or even border squabbles in living memory. Oh, there were tales of great wars and toppled states, but these all dwelled in the distant past. When an Ozymandian empire fell here, it was explicitly for the convenience of any passing Shelley looking for a subject for a sonnet. Yes, Cabal concurred that Dreamlands should have all had the necessary ingredients for conflict and anarchy. They were fat merchants with vast wealth, so money was important here, and where there was money, there was jealousy and violence. There were pirates, mercenaries, marines, and soldiers. There were kingdoms that chafed under ancient enmities with other races and neighbors. All the elements were here, so why did no spark start a conflagration? Perhaps, he concluded, wars could only start here for aesthetic reasons. Tawdry little land grabs simply didn't happen because they're revolting and wrong. Noble crusades were heroic ventures, on the other hand, were romantic and right. Perhaps, Cabal thought, when he had more leisure, he might try his hand at starting a conflict here, just for purposes of scientific inquiry. The Trojan model looked simple and effective. He made a mental note to foment a war at some point and returned his attention to finding the inn. It took another 20 minutes to locate the place, 10 of which were spent in a small square, the center of which was a compact but beautiful garden, arranged around a statue of a middle-aged man of patrician features dressed in a toga. The statue was of striking craftsmanship, but the reason for the pause there was because of all the party, Cabal included, were astounded to discover that they were able, at some curious subconscious level, to hear the statue think. Several people were gathered around, sitting on the pale wooden benches that bordered the square in poses of deep concentration, listening to the thoughts and occasionally nodding in slow comprehension. When one of them arose from his meditations to make a few notes upon a waxen tablet, Cord asked him, "That statue, how is it that we can hear its mind?" This man laughed, a small polite laugh of the type reserved for ignorant foreigners, and said, "That is not a statue. It is the great thinker Arturax, he who has traveled so deeply into the inner realms of thought and intellect that he has been transfigured by the very nature of his ideas. He has no need of food, drink, or rest, because such things are animal and unsuited to a man of thought. Thus he has dispensed with them. He is a hero to all mankind, as he addresses question after question, slaying them with his wisdom." "These problems," asked Johannes Cabal, "I was wondering, do they include how to deal with urban pigeons?" But his colleague shushed him and took him away before the student of Arturax could hear. The inn was called the Haven of Majestic and Bountiful Rest, and worse yet, deserved the name. Cabal rarely visited inns, except to secure the temporary services of rat-like men with names like Tibbs, Felch, and Criven to do the basic shovel work in moonlit cemeteries when he was in too much of a hurry to do it himself. The inns such men frequented in turn had names like the Friendly Gibber, the Sucking Wound, and the Sports Bar, vile places with vile clientele. The Haven, by contrast, was a lively, bustling place full of open-faced men and more than a few women, all wearing bright silks, drinking golden mead and iced wine, singing risque but by no means obscene songs, and never getting more than pleasantly tipsy. Even the sawdust upon the saloon bar floor was fresher than in a busy woodwork shop. Bosie and Shadrach were delighted to see it thus. Cord seemed slightly disappointed, and Cabal simply scowled, as was his wont. The food was good, the drink was good, and the company was bearable, so Cabal bore it where once he might have gone to bed, leaving the others with an unspoken curse to be visited upon their next of kin. 2 hours later, Bosey wavered over Captain Lockery, fresh from completing the offloading of the Edge of Dusk's cargo and looking for a soft berth for the evening. As they were buying, he joined them with the practiced alacrity of a seaman who has sent free booze and in return for a drink and a meal regaled them with tales of the dreamland seas. These frequently ended with the words, "and he was never seen again," so Cabal quickly lost interest. He was on the point of going to his room when he noticed that Lockery was, while cheerfully telling nautical tales of shipwreck desperation, ingesting by sea of monsters and sodomite proclivities of pirates and some unexpected combinations of these elements, feeding his right leg. "Captain Lockery," said Cabal, as he watched the man offer a piece of sour bread to his calf, which gratefully devoured it. "I cannot help but notice that you are feeding your leg." "Aye," said Lockery, unabashed. "It gets hungry." In explanation, he rolled up his right pantaloon leg to reveal what Cabal had assumed would be pale flesh, but was actually a beautifully carved wooden prosthetic. In the outer right calf there was a small hole, and from this hole an inquisitive rodent's face was peering out at them. There were cries of astonishment from the others, but Cabal went down on one knee to look more carefully. "I don't recognize the species. It looks a little like a guinea pig and a little like a dwarf rabbit, but it's barely bigger than a hamster. What is it, Captain?" "Guinea, what was that? Rabbit? I don't know anything of those, Master Cabal, exotic though they sound, but this is a dref, and they're only found on this island." He slapped his thigh, but gently so as not to disturb the creature. "I lost this leg when I was a lad. One day out from here, the weather was strange, and the creatures of air and water were disturbed. My ship, she was the fool's wager out of Ulthar, under Captain Mart, dead these 20 years, was attacked by sea gaunts." Some interested bystanders made a sympathetic groan. 20 or 30, driven mad by the green sun. "I've heard of night gaunts," said Cabal. "Slick, rubbery, faceless black creatures with horns and wings. What are these sea gaunts?" "Much the same," said Lockery, "except at sea. They fell on us. I saw poor old Jack's pilt borne off by 'em, and they tried to do the same to me. Filthy flapping things. But I got a dead man's grip on the rigging of the foremast, and she was a lateen rig, by the by, and I was not going to let go. Not with Jack's screams still echoing in my ears, but the gaunts, they wanted something for their trouble, so—" He waved at the wooden leg. "Well, Captain Mart was a good man. He said to me, 'You're a sailor through and through, and no leg-thieving sea gaunts are going to take that away from you.' And at least that's what he said later, because I'd flaked out at the time from loss of blood. Anyway, he had a favor owed to him by a sorcerer in the city, and he took me to him. Big tower at the northern end of the spice quarter. Some dodgy evokers got it now, last I heard. And he comes up with this little beauty. See, dref live in trees from the sinew woods, southeast of the Lake of Yath. The trees can move, but they got no brains. The dref have brains, pretty good uns, considering how little they are, but they don't look after themselves, so the dref and the sinew trees are sorta—" He looked for the word. "Symbiotes," supplied Cabal, intrigued by the insight into an alien ecology. "Pals," continued Lockery. "Now this sorcerer says dref are clever and they know a good thing when they see it, which is a roundabout way of saying that they train up easy. Keep 'em fed and happy and they'll be your pal for life. This little fella in here, Checky, he knows when I throw my hip forward, it's walking time, and he makes the leg, finest sinew wood this is, shift at the knee and the ankle. Fact is, he just seems to know now we've been together so long." He fed the dref the last of the sour bread before gently nudging its head back in and bunging the hole with a stopper perforated with air holes. "They live about 10 years. It takes about 6 months for you to understand each other, and they go a bit mad a few weeks before they die, sleeping a lot, making the leg bend all ways, so you know it's time to get to the sinew wood with a box trap and some sour bread, and they love the stuff." He looked off into the middle distance, lost in the past. But you know the worst part of all this? Not my leg. No, there's people suffer worse. No, I still think of Jax. Poor old sod. You know what? The rhetorical question was interrupted by Cabal rising. He was never seen again. Good night, gentlemen, and an early start tomorrow. That's the end of chapter 6. So yeah, you got a little, in my brain, I think of it like a guinea pig, but yeah, little guinea pig. Oh, we'll get to drafts. We'll get drafts. Yeah, so cute, right? Sounds cute. Put a little draft in your leg. All you gotta do is feed him sourdough, and he's super happy. Seems like a easy to maintain pet. Be your best friend. Control your legs. Yeah, we'll get more drafts in the future. We get more drafts coming up. So yeah, we're gonna get into it. Well, we're already in it. This book starts very quickly, but there's some more stuff. Man, I'm trying to remember if next week is when shit starts to get real. I don't think it is. It starts to, but it doesn't quite get there. I'm trying to remember where we're at. Right before shit goes down. What page do we end on? Good question. I'll check for you. The last of chapter 6 was on 127. It's not super bad. The drafts themselves aren't bad. The drafts are good boys. They do exactly what you train them to do. No problem. But yeah, drafts themselves aren't inherently bad or anything. The drafts are pretty good. They're pretty cute. Do exactly what you train them to do. Exactly what you train them to do. And as long as you train them right, you should be fine. If at any point, though, you maybe make a mistake and the draft gets the wrong idea about what you're telling it to do, well then, who knows what could happen? Good boys, though. They do exactly what you tell them to, as long as you feed them sourdough. They just happy little tree boys. Happy little tree boys. Do whatever you want. But I like drafts. Get a little draft. Feed it bread. Let it run around my house. Okay. I want to. That way one of them can have a friend. You get two, they can be best buds. Yeah, and I mean, they're not exactly violent. We get to it, but they're not violent. They're just good boys who got trained wrong by the wrong person. We'll get to it. It'll be a fun next couple of chapters. It'll be about 2 weeks, and we'll get the full story of what happens with the giraffes. Fun stuff, fun stuff. Oh, Luna! Good kitten. I think my cat came in here earlier because the door pushed open, but then I think Pawn just like figured out that the live was happening and then left. But yeah, it'll be a fun couple weeks after this. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. God, the thing's been bugging me for a while. I don't know if you can hear it. There's like a bug in here or something. It's freaking me out. It's making a lot of noise for it to be one insect. I'm going to touch my eyeball again. Opposite eyeball. What? Lucy? Is Lucy in the chat? It's because Lucy's mad because I didn't go live last week. I had a lot of stuff to deal with. Car, among other things. I had a whole shit show with that car. Oh, it's stuck in the lampshade. Figured out where the bug's at. It's in the lampshade. It's making a lot of noise. I don't know if it's picking up, but it's annoying. Yeah, she's just salty because I didn't go live last week. We broke schedule, and now they're very suited to structure. They have a schedule just like any of us. That's why they wake you up for feeding time. They know exactly when they get fed. They know. That's why they stick to structure, and we broke the structure. It's my fault. It's my fault. Tell Lucy I'm sorry. Someone go to the bathroom. I don't know. They were walking down the hall. I don't know. Unsure. But my door's cracked because the cat came in here earlier and I didn't want to like break mid chapter and go and close the door. So the door's been open like a couple inches. But I'm pretty sure Pond walked in here and then left the door and left my door cracked. So you can hear everything going on right outside the door. So sorry about that. Aw, good. Tell Lucy we'll be on time from here on out. Given nothing terrible happens to me. I hope nothing else happens. I don't like being out of commission and swamped with anxiety. But car's fixed. My back's getting fixed tomorrow. Hopefully everything will pan out. That may have been the case. Thank you, Lucy. I promise I will not let you down again. At least not on purpose. Never would on purpose. Swiftlet just say they were normal? You're not normal. Okay. She heard her name. She knows I'm talking to her. Tell Lucy she's the best cat. Tell her I love her. Tell her she's the best. Oh, I met another cat on my runs the other night. Like before I threw my back out, I met a new cat. Her name is Midnight, and the only thing I could think of was Franbo. I doubt that's why they named the cat that. They probably named it just because the cat was all black, and the cat was adorable. Did not let me pet her, but it did come up and sniff my hand, probably because I smelled like pizza. But I remembered exactly where that cat lived. Aw, tell her I'm proud of her. What? What do you think a normal being is, Swiftblood? Would you consider it human or something else? Because you're just saying normal. You aren't specifying a species. We need to, look, pick a species. I don't care how you identify. But you know what? I think we should all respect Swiftblood when she decides to come out as her own species. Whatever species she/they are. I don't know what's common for your species, but I do want to respect it. I'm sorry, this got weirder as it went on. I'm not picking on Swiftblood, I swear. We do this all the time. Yeah, they never said. They never said. So we don't know. We're not going to assume your species. So rude. Right? I consider it rude. Facts. And they're gone. They're still here. They're just maybe mad at me. Also maybe laughing. I'm not sure. One of the two. Thank you for the present. Normal Earthling. There are plenty of things on Earth. I feel like that's diminishing all the species on Earth if we just call them Earthlings. All the species that are native to Earth are Earthlings, technically. You could be, thank you for pandas. Will it not? Really? Maybe it knows your secret. Someone else tried typing human. I want to know if you can type it. Maybe it's just Swiftblood can't. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. TikTok knows. It knows. Ha! Outed in 4K by everybody in chat, Swiftblood. What is up? This is largely turned into a weird one-sided attack on Swiftblood. You know what? I'm going to go ahead. We need to show Swiftblood the same amount of respect that we show every other human, regardless of if they're human or not. I say we stop picking on Jen. Everybody show Jen some respect. They haven't done anything wrong so far. They've respected the space. Respected everyone's boundaries. And you know what? As long as they're respecting us, I say we respect Jen, no matter what species they are. Y'all are extra tonight. Everybody coming after Swiftblood. We gotta stop. We gotta end this. I'm ending it. We gotta go. I'll see y'all next week. Same time, same place, 8 p.m. Central. We're gonna come back here. We're gonna read some more shit. We're gonna not talk about Swiftblood species identification. We're not gonna, oh my god. Don't go into VC and pick on Swiftblood and their species identification again. Swiploid, you don't have to subject yourself to this. You can leave at any time. I'll respect it. Oh my god. Later, you guys. I'll see you guys next week, okay? You'll have a good time.